Welcome to Common Ground Conversations Shaping the UK India Relationship and Future. My name is Lakshmi Kaul, and I'm bringing you the UK India series for Global Order. Today, we have with us a very special guest who is not only a well known name among the members of Indian diaspora in the UK, but also has a popular following in India because of his strong pro India stance on various geopolitical matters, particularly on Kashmir and rights of persecuted Hindus. He has been the Conservative Member of Parliament for Harrow East since the 2010 general elections. During this time, he's held several roles in the Conservative Party and in Parliament, including currently being the chair and formerly as the secretary of the 1922 committee. He's a member of the Conservative Party board, chair of the Backbench Business Committee. He's a member of 8 select committees, a member of over 72 all party parliamentary groups, and he has changed the law with his Homelessness Reduction Act 2017. In 2022, he started the process to change the law again by introducing his Supported Housing Regulatory Oversight Bill. He was awarded a CBE in the King's Birthday Honours List 2023. He's also a recipient of the Padma Shri, the fourth highest civilian honour in India. It takes me great pleasure in inviting the Padma Shri Bob Blackman MP to Common Ground today. Hi, Bob.
Hi, good day to you, and I hope you're doing well in India, and indeed that the weather is, in fact, the weather in the UK now is brightening up. It's spring, and people are more joyous as a result.
That's wonderful to know, Bob. So I'm going to ask you a few questions, and you take your time in responding. So
Okay.
you've made multiple visits to India now over the past few years. What have been your impressions of India in these years, and have they changed? And where all have you visited, Bob?
Well, I've had the opportunity now of visiting 14 of the 28 states in India, including, I think I'm still the last serving member of Parliament to visit Srinagar in obviously the Jammu and Kashmir. Obviously, India is a vast country full of differences, different cultures, different languages, even, and obviously different religions. The great beauty of the place is its history, but it's also the young population that is developing new businesses and new ideas all the time. And I think one of the great advantages India has with this young population is that you incubate small businesses. This is something I keep hammering home in the UK. You incubate small businesses so young people have the chance to develop a business idea in a safe environment. And then in the event that it prospers and grows, then they can go out and make it really develop quite quickly. If it fails, then nothing's lost. And therefore, they can start a new idea and a new opportunity. It encourages young people to think outside of the box, and I think it encourages young people to start businesses that otherwise they probably wouldn't have done. In the United Kingdom, we don't do that, frankly. We encourage people to set up small businesses, but often I'm afraid they fail because of cash flow or because of regulation, or it's just something, particularly in the first 18 months. And that's one of the things I think we can learn from India straight away. But as I say, I've had the opportunity of visiting all over India. Obviously, every person goes to Delhi, where you are, Lakshmi. I've been to Mumbai several times. Obviously, I've been to Jaipur recently in January, and I was there a couple of years ago as well, meeting the government and the deputy chief minister, seeing the beauty of Jaipur, which of course has a tremendous history, and seeing the museums and the culture, as well as seeing the forts and the other opportunities. And right now, I think India has a tremendous opportunity, both in terms of the growing economy that is growing rapidly under Prime Minister Modi's inspirational leadership, but equally, everyone is gaining. I think this is one of the great things that the Indian government has been able to do, is to make sure that everyone from the lowest individual to the richest individual is actually improving their life. And indeed, the electrification of villages, for example, is something that's enabled villages around India to come into the 21st century and really prosper and grow. That's something obviously that was done in Gujarat when Narendra Modi was the chief minister there, but he's taken that, I think, to the national position, and everyone is gaining as a result. Equally, of course, India and the UK have agreed different arrangements. We've agreed, obviously, a security and defence alignment, and that cooperation is continuing. We've got a trade agreement. I mean, people keep calling it free trade agreement. It's actually a trade agreement because tariffs are still in place, and not everything is administered freely. So there's still a lot of work to do on breaking down those tariff barriers, so that we can get investment in India from the UK and investment from India into the UK. So there's a gain on both sides. Equally, as I always say, and when we do these things, young people from India there's no limit on the number of young people from India that want to come and study. There's no artificial limits or requirements. Obviously, the visas have to be acquired, and the fees are quite expensive. But nevertheless, there's no limit to the numbers that can come to the UK. I also want to see UK citizens going to study in India, because that's how you build up friendships on both sides. It may be that afterwards, after university courses, people go home, but they've got friends in the two countries, and therefore they build up those friendships and they'll last forever. So the more we do about that sort of cooperation, the better. And indeed, just this week we had an excellent series of events in the UK Parliament on how we build that trade up and how we improve it and increase it and break down, once again, those trade barriers that are preventing further progress.
Interesting. I'm glad that you mentioned the free trade agreement, and I'm not that delighted to hear that there are still, barriers to trade. But you see that in the times to come, that free trade agreement will actually start translating to better movement of people, better movement of goods and services, and generally improve trade. Because, I mean, earlier this week, I think the UK High Commissioner to India was seen quoting very high statistics of trade, exports to India and vice versa. So as an MP who represents, a large population of Indian diaspora, where do you think the trade agreement is going, and what needs to be done to improve it further?
Well, the trade agreement really covers goods at the moment. The services side was, shall we say, the subject of large and elongated negotiations, but still we've got the position whereby UK people, accountants, lawyers, etc., can't come and practice in India, and in the similar terms, accountants and lawyers from India find it difficult to come and practice in the UK because the professional organisations in the UK safeguard the value of their qualifications very closely. I think that's good in the sense of ensuring that people are properly qualified and able to do the work on behalf of clients. But on the other hand, it does look very much like a closed shop, preventing others from coming in and competing. And when I was in Jaipur in January, the accountancy firms were lobbying very hard to say, well, why is it that we can't practice in the UK? And of course, in the UK, we have 4 big accountancy practices, and then many other small practices or single person operations. And all the time, that prevents others coming in and taking on the role. So I think there's work to do on that. Obviously, it was good news for the whiskey industry that the tariff was cut from 150% to 75%. But I mean, it's still 75%. That you can't call that free trade, I'm afraid. And I'm sure the same arrangements still exist at Delhi Airport and Mumbai Airport, whereby at the duty free, before you go into India, as it were, you can pick up a case of whiskey and avoid the duties. So I mean, the whole thing to me is one of, let's try and break these barriers down for the benefit of everyone. But you've got all sorts of things. I mean, one of the key areas that we're still looking at is obviously the steel industry in the UK. At the moment, that is in severe jeopardy. And obviously, Tata Steel are a vitally important part of that. That's a classic example of the UK and India cooperating together. And that's where we've got to make sure that is happening, because obviously we want steel to be available in the UK for the purposes of railways, buildings, you name it, we need steel. And to be dependent on foreign steel, particularly that dumped from China at subsidized prices, is a real problem. At the moment, we've got obviously negotiations going on with the Chinese about the future of steelworks in Scunthorpe, for example, which is really serious, that the UK government's having to subsidise that operation very heavily each day. But we want to put that industry on a proper footing going forward, and that obviously means making sure that the furnaces continue to operate, and indeed that the steel produced is the right steel for the projects that we're undertaking in the UK.
Yeah, I mean, interesting that you've mentioned steel as well. And there's a lot of diasporic businesses that are in the UK. Currently, there's been murmurs about Indians leaving the UK and going elsewhere. So I'll ask you a pointed question then. Are the Indian diaspora safe and happy in the UK currently?
Well, I mean, I'm glad you raised that, because there have been a number of incidents recently up and down the country in the UK, which give rise to concern. We had, as some of your viewers may know, we had a holy celebration in the site of the Harrow Civic Centre, the old Civic Centre, which has been going on for years. I mean, certainly as long as I've been involved, that celebration has continued. It's always been peaceful. There's never been a problem. And yet, towards the end of that joyful evening, thugs came and attacked the Hindus celebrating. They turned over the speakers. They tried to disconnect the audio system. They got chased off by stewards, and then 24 of them came back. It was like a mass brawl. Then after that, the police eventually arrived and arrested one individual. You know, I have to say, this is a really serious problem. That people then say, well, are we safe, you know, in our environment? In Harrow, as you well know, we pride ourselves on having a multicultural, multi-religious area where everyone can celebrate their religion in peace and harmony. But if thugs start to interrupt that, then I'm afraid serious action has got to take place. And in Wembley, we've had in Ealing Road and in other parts in Kingsbury High Road, we've had Indian shops and restaurants being attacked by what we believe to be Somalian Muslim thugs. Well, you know, we've got to say it's just unacceptable. As far as I'm concerned, it shouldn't be the Indians leaving; it should be those thugs that are leaving the UK, because where we gain, I mean, where the Indian diaspora has settled, the economy improves, the education system improves, and the local environment improves, because Indian people, when they arrive in the UK, settle, they build their businesses, they build their families, and they demand, quite rightly, high standards of education in the schools, which improves the education for everyone. And indeed, they operate their businesses and they don't depend on our welfare system. They reach out to look after their extended families, and indeed are model citizens. And you know, that is what we want to see. So yes, the answer is yes, we must make sure that the Indian population and diaspora is safe in the UK, and we must deal with the people that want to cause problems for them. I mean, unfortunately, it's not limited to the Indian population as well. I mean, the Jewish population, of course, have been suffering from anti-Semitism for donkey's years, and indeed for extremely long time, particularly since the 7th of October 2023, when we had obviously the Hamas attack in Israel on the civilian population. Ever since then, we've had hate marches from people supporting prescribed organisations, and indeed we've looked at right across the piece at problems, and now it's affecting the Indian community. We have to continue with the basis of saying that is unacceptable, and make sure those individuals responsible are punished.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder that, so from my time in the UK, I remember aggressive protests combining, the Khalistan and the Azad Kashmir, issues and protests being held in places, especially outside the Indian High Commission, and attacks happening. I'm not heartened. It's not heartening to hear that those sort of things are continuing. I also understand that recently there's been a new definition of anti-Muslim hostility that was unveiled by the UK government. Obviously, it sparked reactions and from politicians and from various religious advisory groups. What is your response to this development? I understand it has been precipitating for a while and in the name of Islamophobia, but there's a new definition now. Where does it leave the minorities?
Well, let's start from where this began. The All-Party Parliamentary Group for British Muslims formed this definition of so-called Islamophobia. Frankly, it wasn't worth the paper it was written on because it was so loose and no one could actually see what it was all about. Then went into specific examples. So, for example, it would be considered Islamophobic to talk about the conquest of India by the Muslim population. At which point you go, well, hang on a minute. I mean, that's a fact of history. You can't deny history. Equally, that if you criticise Muslimness, visible Muslimness, and I challenged people at the time, well, what does that mean? Said, well, we've got beards. So I said, well, excuse me, I know plenty of people with beards and they're not Muslim. So are we being beardist? I mean, it's a complete and utter nonsense. And equally, our other challenge is you could substitute literally for this definition. So remove anti-Muslim, put anti-Hindu, remove Muslim and put anti-Sikh, remove that and put Buddhist, remove it and put Christian, Jewish, or whatever. I mean, it's complete and utter nonsense in my view, and doesn't do any good for race relations whatsoever. What we have to do is make sure that people respect one another, and indeed, when people are creating hatred against people because of their religion, then we have to call that out. But on the other hand, where Islamists, and this is the difference between the vast majority of Muslims who just want to get on with their lives and pray, which is fine, want to run their businesses, that's fine. But when Islamists say, ours is the only religion and we're going to force you to convert, and indeed you mentioned, of course, the Kashmiri Pandits, who were forced out of the valley at the point of a gun, saying, leave, convert or die. I mean, it's that sort of attitude which I'm afraid is absolutely unacceptable. And if those people who are promoting that are not British citizens, they're not all welcome in the UK. Simple as that. And we have to, what the risk that we're running is that we could end up with so-called blasphemy laws, they were abolished a long time ago in the UK. And we have to be free to criticise a religion and criticise those that follow the religion, as long as we're not spreading hatred. And there's not even a fine balance there. The reality is, what we want to do is make sure that people are able to celebrate their religion, but at the same time that they don't cause damage or pain or anything else to other people. And we've got a prime example of that, which has recently happened in the UK, where a Sikh restaurant has proudly put up that they serve non-halal meat. Now, I know particularly, I mean, I don't knowingly eat halal meat. However, people should be free to know what they're eating, and if they don't want to eat halal meat, they should be entitled to do so. That restaurant then has been attacked by Islamists who say it's unacceptable that they're serving non-halal meat. This is a private business operating freely in the UK, and look, I've never eaten in the restaurant, but I have a feeling of saying, well, I might want to go there just to demonstrate that people should have the right to eat what they want, and it's a private business. And if they want to eat halal meat, they can go to a restaurant that serves it. And this is the lack of tolerance that is currently growing in the UK, which we've got to combat.
And in a place like Harrow East, which is like a melting pot of various cultures, this becomes a bigger problem, because then, there is so much more division and hatred that is brewing. What have your constituents said about this?
Well, we've been very fortunate, I think, in many respects that, yes, you're right, it's a melting pot, and that we haven't had too many of these serious incidents. We're just coming up to the end of Ramadan, and I wish those Muslims celebrating Eid Mubarak, which we believe is going to be either late Thursday or early Friday. It's depend on the phases of the moon, as we know. But they've got the right to celebrate the religion in peace and harmony, as all other religions have. And we'll be celebrating Ram Navami over the next few weeks, I suspect. I mean, that's one of the things about Hindu festivals. They seem to go on for weeks at a time, not necessarily one particular day. But this is where we talk and we get people together, and we iron out the differences in that way. And that's, I think, something that's certainly helped. We have had a splurge at the moment in Harrow of burglaries. They're nothing to do with religious hate crime, but that's just general crime that takes place, unfortunately. But I'm pleased to say at the moment we're not getting the sort of level of hate and disorder that is taking place in other parts of London and other parts of the UK.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't help that, the world is witnessing almost theaters of war with the Iran-Israel conflict right now. How does that play within what is going on in terms of hate crimes and burglaries and what have you?
Yeah, well, I think obviously the position with Iran is the head of the snake that has unfortunately been able to cause problems right across the Middle East. Obviously, they support Hamas, Hezbollah, and other terrorist groups that affect in Lebanon and in Gaza. And obviously, Israel is determined to eliminate Hezbollah. I think the good thing now is that the Lebanese government and the Lebanese army are seeking to rid themselves of Hezbollah, which then could lead to a proper peaceful arrangements between Lebanon and Israel, which was always the case until Hezbollah arrived in the country, having been kicked out of Jordan. In terms of Hamas, well, they've been obviously heavily attacked, and negotiations continue on Hamas laying down their weapons and getting to a Gaza that is not operated by terrorists. If that happens, then obviously peace can actually break out between Israel and Gaza. Iran, the Israel-UK war with Iran, thus far has sought to eliminate the missile sites, the drone sites, and their means of production, as well as eliminating the leadership of the Ayatollah's regime. That's been very successful in eliminating that leadership. And now what we all hope for is a change of regime, so that we can have a democratic Iran freed from the system of brutality that's existed in Iran for quite a long time. Obviously, what that has led to is increased risk of anti-Semitism, particularly in the Stanmore and Belmont areas of my constituency. So they're having to take extra precautions on Shabbat, particularly as we've had attacks on Jewish populations across Europe. It's not just confined to the UK, but obviously we had the Manchester attack last year, where two people very sadly died from a terrorist. And we've had the attacks in Holland and beyond, so that wherever the Jewish population is are under threat at the moment as well. Clearly, if we can get to a point whereby the Iran regime is overthrown, that can only be done from within Iran. It can't be done by bombing from the air, but the people of Iran need to rise up and overthrow the regime and install a democratic government after proper elections. And that's obviously what we all want to see. So that's important. And the UK is dragged into this because obviously our air bases are being used by the United States for their attacks on Iran. We've been attacked in Cyprus, and the reality is that, as far as I'm concerned, if you're attacked, then you strike back, and we should be striking back at those sites where those missiles were launched from, joining the Americans in doing so. So, all in all, and we know that the Iranians are blocking the Straits of Hormuz, for example. We've got to eliminate that threat, because otherwise that's a serious threat to trade between the whole world, west and east, because of that, the importance of that seafaring lane. But I think where we are is obviously in Harrow is a microcosm of the world. Generally speaking, people get on with one another. People are neighbours and ignore whatever religion they are, and that's fine. That's the way it should be.
Yeah, one of the things that I found fascinating about the UK was, I'm not sure elsewhere in the world that happens as much, is that there are interest groups and there are representatives, people representatives like Bob, members of parliament, who bring issues that are close to their electorate's heart, and they debate it in parliament. There are many platforms to do that. And you're now the chair of the Backbench Business Committee. So do these sort of issues that have a very strong bearing on the population closer home in the UK do they make their way into those conversations through these platforms? And how often are these debated, and what level of um, forward movement do you see through those debates and discussions and representations?
Well, it was interesting. I mean, you obviously mentioned the situation that exists because Britain is so multicultural, multi-religious, multi-ethnic. Now, the various different diaspora relate back to their origins, where their families originally came from. They're interested because we now have 7 by 24-hour news channels, so that you see about what's going on across the world. You mentioned the conflicts that are taking place. I mean, we've had 500,000 Christians murdered in Nigeria. You never see that on the headlines. We've seen hundreds of thousands of people murdered in Sudan between this terrible civil war that's going on there. Yeah, that very rarely features on our TV. So what we do in Parliament is obviously on behalf of our constituents, and indeed on behalf of diaspora where we have people from that diaspora, we bring those issues to Parliament to discuss them, because our constituents care about them. And in the past, possibly before large-scale immigration took place to the UK, then this probably wouldn't have happened in Parliament, because people would not be so bothered about what was happening in different countries. But it's one of the things I find in my constituency is we've got someone from every country in the world, every language, every religion, and so therefore people are interested in what's gone on. And as we've got, the other interesting thing that is taking place is that as we've went to multi-generations that have actually come to the UK, made this their home, and then had children, and the children have had children. So we're about on the 4th generation now. A lot of those young people are also interested in finding out their roots, where they came from, and so often they've got even greater adherence to religion than their forefathers and foremothers, and also the interest to the country of their origin and the politics of that country. So instead of what most people thought would happen, possibly, that as time went on and generations go older generations, they would get less and less interested in their roots. Actually, I think they're more interested in their roots than hitherto was the case. So I think that's something that we in Parliament reflect that, and it adds to the rich tapestry of the UK Parliament. And also is important that we are in the position whereby when matters are raised in Parliament, people around the world listen to what we have to say. And I think that's equally important. I've always been surprised that when I've raised issues that relate to, as you say, India or some or Bangladesh or one of the other Indian subcontinent countries, Sri Lanka or Pakistan, when I've raised these issues, it suddenly picked up on in the countries and becomes big news. And so it demonstrates that actually this is important to do, and that we can make a difference, even though we don't necessarily have the power to do it, but we can use our power of influence and our soft power, if you like, to try and make positive change for the people of countries that we respect and want to be friends with.
True. And it's interesting that a voice in the UK matters so much within the global setting and in those domestic sort of affairs as well. It's always fascinating. I've always wondered that, with so much displacement that has happened over the last decade, there's more perhaps almost inevitable in the coming times with so much political and economic instability. And you've been championing the enhanced role of public authorities in preventing homelessness. Um, do you see any changes or any developments with regards to maybe capacity as well as duty of care that the UK offers to distressed and uprooted individuals? The immigration policy has always been in sharp criticism. There's always changes happening within that. So, in the context of homelessness in the UK and the increase in number of people who are rendered roofless, what's happening there?
Well, obviously, what's happened in policy terms for a very long time indeed is that in the UK we haven't built enough social rented homes for decades for the people that need them. We are in the position now where you quite rightly say I put through the Homelessness Reduction Act back in 2017. It came into operation in 2018 eventually, and then the full duties came in October 2018. Since then, more than 1.3 million people have been assisted in prevented from ending up homeless, which demonstrates two things. One is it demonstrates the scale of the problem, and secondly, how important that legislation was to, because otherwise, if we hadn't have had that, then the homelessness situation in the UK, or certainly in England, would be far, far worse. Now, we are in the position whereby we've had large-scale immigration to the UK. In most terms, that has been very positive for the UK. People coming to the UK who are of an age where they're working, where they get a job, contribute to the economy, pay their taxes, make it their home, and build a family and friends and so on. That is really welcome. The people that are not welcome are the illegal immigrants who try and get into the country and claim welfare payments, which then is a burden on the taxpayer rather than actually contributing to the economy. And we've tried various different things over the years, and still this current government are trying different things, but it's not working. The sad reality is that unless we address these things to say, I would be very harsh on this, say, if you arrive in the UK illegally, you will not be allowed to stay, and you will be on the first plane or boat out of the place that we can arrange. And very sorry, but we have no duty to hold people that have no connection with this country. Once that message got across, I think that would be the end of the illegal migration. You have to be hard and demonstrate that you're willing to do that. Now, equally, in terms of housing, where we're at is that the rough sleeper, the number of people sleeping rough on our streets is going up and up and up. The number of people that are actually homeless in either what we call sofa surfing, i.e., they sleep on someone else's sofa. They hope that their friends will continue to be friends, but eventually the friends say, "Well, you've been here long enough. Isn't it time you found a place of your own?" And then they'll approach the local authority, and then it's up to the local authority to help and assist them. Our biggest problem is the lack of housing that's been built in the UK, and indeed the type of housing, because we don't build enough family houses, we don't build enough houses for extended families at all, and indeed we don't build enough socially rented homes so that people can pay a reasonable degree of rent for the property that they occupy. My solution has always been, and I've trumpeted this for a long time, that local authorities in particular should stop selling land that's redundant, that they're not using it for other purposes. They should actually then turn it into housing by getting planning permission for the housing that they want, getting a private developer to come in and develop it along the lines of what they've been given planning permission for. In this country at the moment, that what tends to happen is they sell the land, the developer sits on it for as long as they can before applying for planning permission, in the hope that the prices will keep going up, so they're going to make a bigger profit on it. We've allowed that to happen for far too long, and indeed that's why we should be doing that. And I'd also then, of course, allow the people that move into the houses that we put in, and I emphasise houses, not blocks of flats that are soulless, dangerous, and indeed are crime-ridden. We learned about this in the 1960s, and I spent time as a local authority leader getting rid of those blocks of flats in Brent and regenerating the area in a positive way, and we're in the position whereby we achieved all that, but now they're being brought back, and you think, well, have we not learned anything from those times in the 1960s where we thought, well, people, well, not me, but people thought better of doing things. Now, if people want to live in flats, that's fine. I mean, I've no prejudice against people, but I think the vast majority of people that I know, that I meet, say, well, I want a house, I want a little bit of garden, not a huge garden, but a little bit of garden to look after, somewhere where the children can play in safety, and then be able to park my car, which I use to get around in, on the driveway, and so on. It's not rocket science in this respect, but unfortunately we're tending to build, as I say, these soulless blocks of flats, and lo and behold, the developers have trouble selling them. What a great surprise! So it's a big job of work. And you mentioned as well my supported housing regulation. Here in the UK, we have this to explain to your viewers, supported housing is housing that's being given to people that are homeless, that are, say, recovering from drug addiction, are prison leavers, people fleeing domestic violence, people that have left the armed forces and are veterans, and so on. So people suffering from physical, mental illness, etc., where they need a roof over their heads, but they need support to rebuild their lives. And at the moment, the situation is that anyone can come in and set up a supported housing unit, and then they can charge the taxpayer whatever they like in rent, and that gets paid. And they say it's for supported housing. Now, there are really good charities that do a wonderful job in the UK, excellent charities that support people in rebuilding their lives. But unfortunately, there's an awful lot of rogue landlords, because what they do is they take over a house, say a 3-bedroom terraced house or semi-detached house. They expand it to the side, they expand it to the back, they expand it above, all under permitted development rights, so they don't have to get planning permission. Then a 3-bedroom house becomes an 8-bedroom house. They've got a small kitchen, small shared bathroom, and then they charge exorbitant rents. And then the local authority has to pay that rent. I mean, and they don't give the people any support. Worse still, if someone has the temerity to get a job, I mean, they get a job and actually rebuild their lives, they get kicked out because they can't claim the housing benefit then. So, these rogue landlords have got to be driven out of business. And that legislation was passed in 2023, and I'm still waiting for the government to introduce it. At the moment, this is costing the taxpayer, through housing benefit, huge amounts of money every week. And if we just introduce that legislation, got it into operation, we drive these rogue landlords out of business, because they don't offer the support, they exploit vulnerable people, and it's totally unacceptable. At the same time, we've got to support the excellent charities that do a really good job of helping and assisting vulnerable people. So you're right, Lakshmi, I have a lot of passion for helping homeless people who've fallen on hard times through no fault of their own. And we've got a wonderful local charity in Harrow called Firm Foundation. They do a brilliant job of getting people off the streets, getting them into a fit state, getting them to housing, getting them to an opportunity to get a job, and they're expanding operations in a big way, which is great, to assist people and prevent them from ending up sleeping rough. So, the charities like this all over the country that are really, really good, but really we shouldn't need them. If we did this properly.
Yeah, and you're right. The dignity of those individuals is equally important than just getting a roof over their head. I'll ask you one last question, just out of personal interest, because I mean, I've been one of those people who was mentored by you. So, are you seeing an increased interest among members of the Indian diaspora in UK politics now? And what will your message be to any political aspirants from the diasporic communities?
Well, it won't surprise you, as you quite rightly say, I'm chairman of the 1922 committee, which actually means I'm chairman of the parliamentary party for the Conservative Party. I'm a Conservative through and through, and will be till the day I die. And I would say we are seeing a big increase in the number of people of all ages from the Indian diaspora coming forward and getting involved. It's one of the lessons, particularly for those that went to East Africa first and then came to the UK. But in these African countries, Uganda, etc., Kenya, Tanzania, Ethiopia, all those countries, the Indian diaspora ran the economy. Yet when it came down to it, dictators came in and kicked them out, and therefore they had to come. And indeed, they came to the UK when India wouldn't accept them to come back, which is I think, testimony to the welcoming message that the Conservative Party gave to the Indian diaspora when they were desperate. So everyone is settled. They've built their businesses. They've built their lives. They've got their kids into good schools, good education, and those kids have gone on to bigger and better things. And then they're getting involved in politics. My answer to that is you've got to get involved. You can't sit on the sidelines, because if you sit on the sidelines, the risk is, and we mentioned this at the beginning of the conversation, the risk on the sidelines is that you get picked on by other communities who are jealous of what you've achieved. So you need to get involved in the politics. And I would, of course, say, come and join the Conservative Party. If you look at the policy and philosophy the Conservative Party has, we believe in the maximum possible freedom of the individual under the law. We believe in strong defence, strong law and order. We have strong family values, believing that you should look after your family and not depend on the state. But the state has to be there to support people that are not able to support themselves. I could go on, but every one of those shared values is shared by the Conservative Party and by the Indian diaspora. And I would encourage everyone to come forward, join the party, get involved, stand for election if that's what you want to do. If you don't want to get involved that hard, come and join the party and enjoy the opportunities there are. If you're really desperate and you want to turn other political parties around, you could dip your toe and try and change them, but good luck with that, because the Conservative Party, by the way, is the only party that's had a leader and Prime Minister of Indian origin. Our Shadow Foreign Secretary, of course, is of Indian origin. She was previously Home Secretary. We've had a Chancellor who of Indian origin. We're the only party that's had a woman leader, and not just one occasion, but 4 occasions now. And the reality is that there's no glass ceiling in the Conservative Party. A lot of these other political parties say, oh, we want you to come on board. But funny enough, no one gets promoted through those channels to leadership module levels unless they're mates of the different leaders at the time. The Conservative Party does things on merit, and of course the Indian diaspora, above all else, has tremendous merit. But don't leave it too long. I mean, often one of the problems is that people come along shortly before elections, say, I want to stand for election. You need to get involved early, learn from, as you did, Lakshmi, learn about what's involved, and then develop your capability so that you then demonstrate that you're a good person to be a candidate, and indeed you've learned how to campaign and what to do. Because people, I know, come along and say, well, I want to get involved. It seems to me that they always do it too late. and indeed we're coming up to local elections in across England and elections in Scotland and Wales for their devolved parliaments coming up in May. And I'm sure we'll get people coming forward now and say, oh, I want to be a candidate. It's too late. We selected candidates a year ago. You've got to get involved now in the campaigns, by all means, but understand you're going to have to wait an opportunity which will come, provided you stick around.
Yeah, and the UK still has, physically counting ballots and things like that. It's a lot of hard work, politics, and it's public
Indeed.
service. I know from experience. Well, Bob, thank you so much for an insightful conversation today and for speaking with us at Global Order. Thank you for your time and good luck with all the things that you're doing.
Well, and I wish everyone celebrating in a couple of days' time the New Year. It seems to different diaspora and different communities in India celebrate the New Year at almost different days of the week and different times. But to everyone celebrating a Happy New Year. The coming of spring, of course, is a time of great joy, great opportunities, and let's hope that we can see that continue to be the opportunity for India. Tremendous growth in the economy, tremendous growth in influence across the world, and let us look forward to that relationship between the UK and India growing ever stronger.
Thank you. This is it for today. We'll be speaking to another interesting guest, a prominent voice from the UK-India corridor at Common Ground, presented to you by me, Lakshmi Kaul, for Global Order. Stay tuned. Thanks, Bob.
Thanks.